I'll now call the Tuesday, January 31st RTD board meeting to order. We're convened as of 6 p.m. I'd respectfully ask everyone to remain muted unless you're recognized to speak. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Please note that until further notice, the official meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recording, along with the unofficial minute will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. You can visit rtd-denver.com, and a live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. I'm Lynn Geisinger. I'm saying that because this is my first meeting as chair, and so I'll give it a good go. Our Pledge of Allegiance, Director Sloan, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Director Rosenthal, would you please read out loud the land acknowledgement?
Will do. The RTD Board of Directors acknowledges that the land on which our buses and trains operate is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and other contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to these lands. We honor our Indigenous elders who have traveled, inhabited, and stewarded these mountains, hills, and plains throughout the generations. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of inequity of the Native and all historically oppressed peoples, and recognize their current and future contributions in the district as we move forward.
I will now call the roll. Director Bouquet.
Present.
Director Broom.
Present.
Music.
Here.
First Vice Chair Catlin.
Here.
Second Vice Chair Davidson.
Here.
Treasurer Deschelle.
Here.
Director Guzman.
Present.
Director Harwick.
Present.
Director Rosenthal.
Present.
Director Rusha.
Present.
Director Sloan.
Here.
Director Tisdale.
Present.
I am here. Oh, I missed two on the next page. Director Williams
Good evening, I am here.
and Director Whitmore.
I am present.
With 15 present and 0 absent, we have a quorum. One of the nice duties of serving on the board is we get to recognize the RTD retirees. And tonight we have several that we are recognizing. I don't believe anybody has been able to join us this year, but it's really important to acknowledge and an honor to acknowledge these individuals who work here for a significant portion of their professional careers. He is very grateful to have these and other such amazing and dedicated people as part of our family. So I'd like to read the names of employees who've retired since November. I'm correct, aren't I, Ty Shrey, that none of these are here tonight, is that right?
That's correct.
Great. Juan Calzada, custodian, 23 years. Leo Dowd, facility maintenance mechanic, 38 years. Larry Herbert, bus operator, 24 years. Rodney Stephen Hunter, a bus operator for 25 years. Roger Kane, senior associate general counsel, 32 years. Jerry Vaughn, bus operator, 28 years. And Jamie Urinda, lead dispatcher, 25 years. Our retirees were unable to attend, but I do thank them again for their hard work and commitment and dedication to RTD. Thanks. This is our public participation period, which is open to anyone who would like to. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Staff will unmute you when it's your turn to speak. If you're dialed in, press *6 to toggle your mute settings. Please bear in mind that by participating in this process, you are being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then your comments will have to be submitted in writing. If any speaker has documentation or reference materials, or if any member of the public would like to submit written comments, please email those materials to rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. During this time, the board will not offer comments or responses. Directors or staff may contact speakers following their comments if they raise matters that lend themselves to follow-up. Please begin your remarks by stating your name, and you'll have up to 3 minutes to provide comments. Has anyone raised their hand or is in line to speak?
Yes, we have 3 speakers in the queue, and our first speaker is James Flatham.
Great. Mr. Flatham, if you'd please state your name and then you may proceed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Flatham. I'm from Greater Denver Transit. My comments this evening are going to be centered around the L-Line operations during community celebrations like Viva Streets and Juneteenth. Over the past few years, we've noticed that RTD tends to suspend L-Line service during some of the 5 Points neighborhood's biggest events. This year, we see that RTD is poised to spend about $5 million on the L-Line to future-proof the infrastructure. So Deborah, would be awesome if we could get an update later tonight on the latest on that project. So, clearly the community has an asset with the L-Line, right? RTD clearly sees value. It's pumping $5 million to keep it running. We think we need the value of the L-Line to be shown in more of an operational sense. So in particular, we think that Viva Streets is a great opportunity to showcase the L-Line as part of the day's celebration of personal and non-auto mobility. With all the pedestrian traffic on Welton, this is a great opportunity to showcase the line, especially as attendees who've chosen to walk large stretches of the event might be looking to sit down and maybe even complete part of their journey on transit. A ride along the L-Line is a perfect transit attraction to offer the community, especially for transit uninitiated for Viva Streets. And we would even encourage RTD to consider waiving fares for the day along the L-Line to help celebrate. In Denver's mobility and urbanism circles, we've long dreamed about a future where a robust amount of Denver chose to go car light or even car free. So we find it baffling that as soon as we get a glimpse of this future, where a neighborhood comes to life with extra foot traffic and vibrant neighborhood activities, we are shutting down the key transit artery while autos still flow freely on neighboring blocks. Suspending service on the L-Line during Viva Streets or Juneteenth makes a mockery of especially Viva Streets' non-car message. Shutting down the L-Line due to a non-car event sends not just the wrong message, but an anti-truth message. It says that RTD services on Welton Street are not vital. Transit must be able to work when demand for non-auto mobility increases. If we cannot handle these predictable spikes in pedestrian traffic, then how can we say that Denver's transit system offers a viable alternative to car travel? Previous inquiries about L-Line shutdowns have cited safety. Based on what happens in other cities and across the globe, we view the safety consideration as absolutely manageable. For just one elementary example, every day at Disney parks across the world, trolleys, streetcars, and buses rumble up and down Main Street, USA, a pedestrian mall that is packed, absolutely packed with people, and these vehicles operate safely. These are the conditions that high-performance streetcars are designed for. And on this part of RTD's light rail network, the light rail vehicles operate effectively as a streetcar. The existing safety devices built into everyday operations are absolutely sufficient. We are going to urge all parties in the planning and operations of Viva Streets and Juneteenth to come up with a plan that ensures the L-Line is a feature of the event. We think that RTD is up to the task, and we encourage them to not let us or the neighborhood down. That completes my comments for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Flatham. As I said, we don't, as a matter of course, respond to these, but you are heard and we appreciate you coming. Who is next in line, Tashrei?
So next we have Riley Wharton.
Riley Wharton, are you there?
Yes, I am. You guys hear me, right?
Yep.
I have recently heard, by the way, this is a spoken version of my letter that I sent anonymously via email. it's mostly for RTD management. It's not necessarily for the board, because it's a potential policy, not a policy that already exists. Good evening. I've recently heard that RTD wants to quote unquote ban passengers from riding with nowhere to go. I understand that this potential policy comes with concern for how many RTD users feel unsafe and how crimes have increased on RTD vehicles. And I agree that a transportation system that not only feels safe but is safe is a priority that a transit agency should aim for. However, this policy is not the right way to do it. In fact, it is a dystopian approach. I want to start by stating that it is not RTD's duty to handle homelessness, but rather the duty of the state of Colorado and the cities of the region. RTD handling homelessness is unreasonable and cruel, not only on RTD's part, but on part of the various administrations of Colorado's past and present. Thus, RTD having to use its resources to get people not to commit crimes on RTD, rather than the police doing that, is a waste of resources and limits the amount of transit service RTD can provide. This is shameful, but I'm not really shaming RTD in this paragraph. I'm shaming the Polis administration. As a left-leaning administration, they should be more empathetic towards those struggling with homelessness, but unfortunately they aren't. I also think that this policy, on top of being useless, is also very hard to implement. What does proof of destination even mean? How do I prove that I need to go to work or school? I doubt I'd have proof if I wanted to visit a friend in Capitol Hill, for example. Then it will be less likely to punish all those who are in the bus for no reason and more likely to be done arbitrarily. As in, the transit police will likely target poor people, especially Black people and other people of color. Aren't people who are struggling or poor people more dependent on transit than rich people? Do you really want to punish those who need help the most? Not to mention, it makes life tougher for those experiencing homelessness instead of letting Colorado give them an option to escape the suffering. In that case, let's pretend that this policy is not only able to be implemented in the first place, but is not also done arbitrarily. Even that, in that case, it's still kind of problematic. People use transportation for a variety of reasons, including pointless ones. For example, when it comes to driving or biking, people do that recreationally or for fun. Likewise, there's a surprising amount of people who ride transit for fun, or maybe they feel depressed and need to have a moment on the train. This isn't not quite as important as someone who needs to go to school or the hospital or an appointment or something, but it still demonstrates that a lot of Colorado politicians are so desperate to get rid of homeless people from RTD that they're willing to make their ridership lower because of it. One might think that there are a few other ways that the image problem and also the safety problem can be solved, but I have a potential solution that might work. No, it would work. Provide actually good transit service. For example, New York obviously has the famous subway, and even though there are strange characters on the subway, everyone still uses the subway.
Your 3 minutes has been up for a bit here. If you wouldn't mind wrapping up, we really appreciate your comments. There'll be other opportunities.
So essentially, I think that the policy in terms of crime, or rather in terms of not letting people do transportation, or essentially, I believe that the policy is just not the right direction to go, and I believe RTD could do so much better, because I truly believe that the RTD has so much potential to be one of the best transit agencies in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay, Ms. Parrish, who is next?
Next, we have Richard Bamber.
Mr. Bamber, welcome.
Hi there. Good evening, everybody. So I'd like to start with a little bit of a confession. 13 years riding RTD, and I've probably been in violation of number 11. That's alcoholic beverages. 12, eating on RTD. 13, drinking a beverage without a lid. I think that was a can. I think probably 15, I dropped a potato chip once. 27, because coming back from the airport, needed another seat for my baggage. 43, that was an accident, just being idle-minded, really, feet on seats. So I throw myself at the mercy of RTD's management, and if you want to send me a letter suspending me from the system, I'll take it in good grace. Yeah. Let's be honest here. suspension, even unless you guys are going to go full on Madison Square Garden with photo recognition on every bus and train, probably going to risk riding the system within a few days. You're cheaper than Uber. And that's the thing with the homeless people. They are suspended and thrown out of everything. They're moved along. They're told to move on from RTD, the 16th Street Mall, Civic Center, Starbucks, everywhere. Their whole life consists of staying here until they get moved on. RTD has enough rules to throw people off buses and trains. There are rules saying that drugs, criminal behavior, non-payment, no fare are all there. Okay, you have the rules to throw the people who are really causing a problem off your trains. The people who really have nowhere to go are just going to come back. Okay, you're playing, and this one, you're starting to bring in a rule that is totally discretionary. Riding around with nowhere to go, at least not being able to have a fare, that's kind of, you either can produce a fare or you can't. It's not discretionary. But this idea of a day pass only being a day pass for some people and not others is, we can't see how it's enforceable. Now, to RTD's credit, and even I don't think they should have to do this, but you're doing it. The homeless outreach people are good. I understand the agency's employing more people related to mental health. It's sad that the transit agency should feel it has to do this because that's a failure of other departments on the city. You've been let down. But it's good that you're trying to at least fill the gap. Firstly, the message needs to be the city and the people who should be supporting what is not a transit problem need to start actually supporting you. So I encourage everyone on the board to start talking about this. RTD should have somewhere to hand these people off to. They should be willing to go because day after day, you see even security staff at Union Station are on first name terms with some of the people who show up every day. Move along, Marie. Move along, Marie. And Marie's like, where to? Sheridan Station. Ah, right. Clearly the whack-a-mole and push around is not working. So I urge the board to think and set policy that we're going to tackle this problem how a way it's actually going to get solved and serious inroads are made into it. And that is, let's redouble our efforts to get these partnerships. Let's put the city on blast for not stepping up and not providing people to help drug addiction, mental health, or just plain homelessness. And let's get back to doing things like that rather than, going to a point where we're making up really arbitrary rules, which are only going to just annoy regular riders. And by the way, if you bring the rule in that says the electrical outlets banned, I'm really, really screwed. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bamber. Your comments. Thank you all. Anybody else in the queue?
Yes, we have Ryan Keeney.
Okay, Mr. Keeney.
Hello. Yeah, my name's Ryan Keeney. I wanted to comment on our recent service schedule changes. So I live in the Capitol Hill neighborhood and I commute to the Denver Tech Center. In order to do this, I take the 12 on Downing, the bus number 12 on Downing, to the Louisiana Pearl Station and transfer to the E-Line train, light rail train, where I then continue on down to the Tech Center. Effective with the new changes, the bus and the train are scheduled to arrive at the station at exactly the same time. So the one I would be arriving at for myself personally would be 7:48 in the morning. If the buses and trains are on time, this means that making this transfer is impossible and you are essentially forced to wait an entire 15 minutes. I did communicate this through the service schedule email communication channel, but I did just want to emphasize this here again because it's ultimately the board that approves the schedule changes. And I think it might be worth examining whether it might be worth examining the seamlessness of the transfers because people really don't like waiting around. And I recognize that 15 minutes is the longest time in the world, given that many of RTD services are on half-hour headways. But I do think it's important to, especially with this connection, because Capitol Hill is one of the most walkable, dense, and transit-dependent neighborhoods, and the Denver Tech Center is one of the largest employment hubs. And a lot of people do get off and transfer at this station, in my observations. So yeah, I just wanted you guys to consider that. Thanks for your time, and have a good rest of your meeting tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keeney, and I'm glad you sent that to service changes email as well. That's a good approach. All right, anybody else, Ms. Parrish?
There are no additional hands raised, and I did want to note that there were 3 emails received from Christopher, Diane Graves, and Tim Lovato, and those will be included in the full transcript once that is ready for public transparency.
Great, thank you very much. With no other participants in the queue, we'll close the public participation at this time. Next item is the external entities report. This month we have 2 entity reports. The first report is from the Accessoride Paratransit Advisory Committee, or APAC. Ms. Julie Jennings, please start when you're ready.
There we go.
There we go.
My name is Julie Jennings. I'm presenting you a summary of the minutes from the January 10th APAC meeting. First update we discussed was QRide software and its mobile app. They will replace the Route Match software and the RTD app. That software, the QRide software, is scheduled to go live on April 1st of this year. The mobile app will be ready for APAC volunteers to test in February. The access on demand, we've had an Uber pilot program, and now in addition to Uber, there will be Metro Transportation, Z-Trip, and Lyft. Anyone interested, any Accessoride customers, I should say, that are interested, will need to sign up even if they've been using the Uber pilot program. The RFP for Accessoride services vendors was re-released. The current vendor contracts are extended through June 2023. The new anticipated start date is July 1st for new vendors, for new contracts. A customer satisfaction survey. The research contractor will randomly call Accessoride customers until they've had approximately 400 respondents across demographics. If a respondent chooses to take it in writing, they will be given a link for that option. And finally, we had a review and approval of APAC operating protocols. There were 4 edits proposed. The first one is to differentiate voting participants from the new ex officio participants. The second was to clarify that if a voting participant is officially representing an organization, the organization must submit a letter confirming that they are representing. The third adds a new section for ex officio participants, and the fourth clarifies that a conflict of interest is when an APAC participant has a financial interest in conflict and not a personal interest. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jennings. The second report is from the Citizens Advisory Committee, or the CAC. Mr. John Fusa, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair Geisinger. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for accommodating the CAC on your agenda. As indicated, I'm John Fusa. I'm co-chair of the CAC with Matt Applebaum. Matt can't be here tonight because he's at the RTD Northwest Rail Peak Service Study Open House. So we look forward to hearing all about that in February from him. So I'll be giving the update, and kind of briefly, with the holidays putting us into hiatus, we did not meet in December 2022. So a quick update on our last meeting in November, and then I'll step through January and some of the things we're working on for you, Chair, and the board members. First, I want to thank RTD staff for continuing to be so involved and supportive of the CAC as a body and as its members, particularly Brandon Figliolino, who's terrific. Also Jennifer from Catalyst, and Colleen and Loretta and the whole team from P Consulting. So kudos to all of them. In November, we heard from Todd Nickel of the RTD staff with a presentation about the RTD budget process, really as an educational, informational item for the CAC as well. And he was outstanding and answered all of our questions, even ones that aren't answerable currently. We also heard from Charlie Stanfield of the RTD staff about the RTD call for partnership process. Really interesting, and with a number of community-based members on the CAC, kind of RTD's interest in having a potential process for partnership with the community throughout the region is really of interest to the CAC. We are also working as a body. We have a subcommittee working on drafting a mission statement and hopefully simple bylaws for the CAC how to operate. And once we have those in good draft form, and once they've been reviewed by the full CAC, it's our intent and hope that we can share them with the RTD board for the board's review and comment if there are any. That was mostly November. As I said, in December, Chair Geisinger and board members, we did not meet. We've spent January meeting welcoming new CAC board members, kind of a meet and greet, and also helping them understand the CAC role and process and helping them onboard. We also were very lucky, I think, to have a couple RTD board members, including you, Chair Geisinger. So thank you for joining us in January and sharing your background and kind of your thoughts on RTD. We also were lucky enough to have 3 other RTD board members. So I want to recognize them and thank them. Michael Guzman, Ian Harwick, and Marjorie Sloan joined us, and we heard from them, and it was terrific to meet both some new and returning board members. So thank you very much for your time and interest in the CAC. We met in January and had a brief talk with Stuart Summers, the new Chief Communications and Engagement Officer for RTD, and we do think kind of that strategic communications and engagement is a critical piece for RTD to tell its story about what it does and the benefit it brings in the region. The CAC supports that, so we were glad to hear from Mr. Summers. We had a very extensive legislative update from Michael Davies at the state and federal level, and he spent quite a bit of time for us that he doesn't have, I know. So thanks and kudos to him. We heard an update, and the CAC continues to be very interested in the Subregional Service Council initiative. It's an effort that the CAC is very supportive of and hopes to lend that support to RTD this year as that process both evolves and unfolds. We think that's a terrific effort by RTD to engage its district and also to follow up on the Accountability Committee final report. We continue to work on chartering in January, hopefully more to come in February. We also had kind of an initial conversation as a body about 2023 priorities and interests. And without going through the whole list, because you have other business to attend to, our CAC for 2023 has identified a few interests and priorities: legislative affairs and updates, the sub-regional service councils, any update on the RTD FAIR study and process from last year, also system safety and the user experience. And we did express a desire through RTD staff, to perhaps invite the police chief or the deputy chief to talk to us about that issue, which is foremost to the user experience. And also learning from RTD staff, and to the degree board members would like to talk to us about partnership opportunities, whether it's with DRCOG for funding the Front Range Passenger Rail District, which is just getting stood up, for their efforts, which might be complementary and supportive of RTD Northwest Rail. So lots of interest. We'll have to narrow it down. And then with that, the last comment and request, if I may, Chair Geisinger and board members, is that the CAC would like to schedule meetings with as many of the RTD board members who are willing to meet with us over a coffee or perhaps for a lunch in the first half of 2023. We did that last year and in prior years, and it was, we have found it was very helpful, at least to the CAC, in terms of building relationships, talking about issues that where the CAC maybe have interest and may be able to lend its support, and also expanding communication. So if we can, I'd like to request board consideration of meeting with CAC members, 1 or 2 at a time, and helping us with scheduling if you're willing to do that as a board and as individual board members. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fuchsia. And I will say that that meeting and other meetings that I've been able to attend from time to time with the CAC, I always find it to be a really interesting discussion, very thoughtful, very knowledgeable group, and I appreciate that. I think people did appreciate the meetings last year one-on-one, and at some point in the past we did them groups together. So perhaps let's carry on that conversation and see what we can put together this year.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
You bet.
Have a good evening. Thanks.
And you too. All right. Now we come to the committee reports. Some of these may be short. We haven't dived into a lot of the substance yet, but there's some. Director Deschel, do you have anything to report on the Zero Emission Vehicle Ad Hoc Committee?
Yes, thank you so much, Director Geisinger. This is Bobby Deschel. I chair the ZEV Ad Hoc Committee. Earlier this month, the ZEV, the 25th, the ZEV Ad Hoc Committee met to prepare for a roundtable that's coming up on Thursday, where we will have outside guests visiting us. We worked and discussed with staff about questions to ask those of folks who will be visiting to better draw upon their knowledge and marry it with what our staff really needs in order to better analyze and better leverage the knowledge of those who are joining us. So we will be having our second roundtable again this Thursday afternoon. After the roundtable in around March, it is anticipated that staff will be bringing the scope of work related to a fleet transition plan to the committee, at which point the committee will collaborate with staff in order to better define the scope of work as we evaluate what a zero emission transition can be. Following that meeting, the plan is to allow the scope of work to go through its process so that we can see a full fleet transition plan and better evaluate cost, timing, and other critical factors such as infrastructure, ownership of vehicles, ownership of facilities, and what may actually be required to transition RTD to a zero emission fleet. As opposed to pushing forward with a goal and managing the plan towards the goal, the committee discussed it would be more prudent use to evaluate the amount of public funds it may take to transition over to a zero emission fleet versus putting out a goal and possibly committing the agency to costs that it may not be able to meet. We look forward to continuing to collaborate with staff, and please continue to check your emails for when these committees or roundtables are meeting. Of course, all are welcome. I also have audio if you want me to roll right in.
Yeah, yep. Director Deschel, you are also committee chair for the audit committee, if you like to report for
Thank you, Director Geisinger. The audit committee met on January 18th as our kickoff meeting. As a reminder, last year, the ad hoc audit committee worked to sort of reevaluate and constitute the audit committee as a separate independent committee comprised of 3 directors and 2 independent directors who are out, or excuse me, 2 independent committee members who help round out the expertise that's needed for an audit committee to be able to evaluate audit. The audit committee evaluates both internal audit and external audit and looks at both enterprise risk assessment audits, cyber audits, as well as the traditional financial audits that most folks are familiar with. During our January 18th meeting was really more of a kickoff meeting with our outsourced internal audit service provider, Reuben Brown. Reuben Brown has conducted one-on-one interviews with board members and members of RTD senior staff. We had 12 board members participate, as well as 10 members of senior staff, to help inform the survey that will be provided to directors, I believe staff as well, in order for our enterprise risk assessment. The enterprise risk assessment is key for the audit committee to also come before the board to evaluate what risks we see and how well prepared we are to address those risks. The audit committee is currently in the midst of scheduling its next committee meeting. However, there will be about a 1-week turnaround time from when the enterprise risk assessment survey is provided to when the enterprise risk assessment survey period will be concluded. So we appreciate folks' prompt attention to time. I know Director Davidson circulated, I believe it was an article surrounding sort of other things to take into consideration when going through audit. We look forward to continuing to work with both our internal auditors as well as our external audit, which is done by Plant Moran. To the extent there are any questions on either the ZEB committee or the audit committee, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Great, thank you very much. Finance and Planning Committee, Chair Tisdale, do you have anything you would like to report?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The work of the Finance and Planning Committee is accurately and adequately set forth in the minutes that form a part of this agenda, and so I won't burden this discussion further with other comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Operations and Safety Committee Chair Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 2022 committee chair opened the meeting. A new chair and vice chair were elected at that meeting. There were no items on the agenda as the committee was just being formed, with some desultory discussion under other matters. Invitation to future meetings were sent out to a number of staff, community advocates, and interested entities. So we hope to have a more lengthy report next time, and we appreciate everyone's interest. The meeting will be later on this month, and as Director Deschel said, we are always open to the public.
Thank you very much. The next item is approval of the board meeting minutes and committee reports. The board and committee meetings were included in the board packet. Are there any corrections from the directors? I actually have a very small one, and I apologize. I meant to call you Ms. Parrish. It's just that when we postponed the ZEB proposal, it says in one place that Director Deschel made the motion and Director Davidson seconded it. And then it says that I made the motion. I think that was Director Deschel and Director Davidson, but otherwise I'd say the minutes, as always, were excellent, and we appreciate the board office help. Unless there's objection to considering these minutes all at the same time, may I please have a motion to approve the minutes for the January 12th, 2023 Executive Committee meeting, the January 17th Finance and Planning Committee meeting, January 18th Audit Committee, January 18th Operations and Safety Committee, and the January 26th, 2023 Executive Committee.
So moved, Director Williams.
Second?
Second.
Who was that?
Director.
Oh, great. I heard Director Williams as the movement and Director Guzman as the second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Are there any no votes on this action? All right. With 15 yes votes and no votes and 0 abstentions, that this motion passes. Thank you. Next item is the chair's report. And my first 3 weeks have been busy. Thank you very much for all of you. So many of you have been helping and having conversations with me along the way. I am just returning from the Northwest Rail open house that our staff and consultants have put on here in Boulder. And it was very well attended. I think that it was a good turnout. It is an open house style with boards around the room. And there were plenty of staff members and community members, people from our advisory committee who were there to answer questions at the various boards. and help people. And then encouraging people to, in addition to making comments there, to go online. There is another meeting on Thursday night, February 2nd in Westminster. If people are listening and are interested, please try to attend that as well. And then there is an online comment period that is ongoing for a bit here. So they're making great progress on the Northwest Rail peak period study, and we look forward to getting more public comment. Many of the things I've been spending time on are on our schedule tonight, thinking about the retreat, the in-person versus remote. Some of those things, the ZEV roundtable, I'll join Director Deschel in inviting everyone to come and attend that on Thursday afternoon. I think it's at 3, certainly in the 2-week calendar. We will start next month with our lobbyists coming to join us. So I think with the legislative session in full swing, that will be of interest to everyone. And I want to take a minute to congratulate our former chair, Angie Rivera Malpiedi, who was named Woman of the Year by the Colorado WTS organization. Yeah. She has been involved in transportation and leadership in the Denver area for many years, and we're very proud to have her recognized in that way. That's all I have. General Manager Johnson, do you have a report to share with us?
Yes, thank you very kindly, Madam Chair, and good evening to you, to all board members, and to all those who are virtually assembled. I am Deborah Johnson, the General Manager and CEO of the Regional Transportation District. This evening, I will share with you the following information centered around the agency's strategic priorities. Regarding community value, I will discuss a number of meetings in which I've engaged at the last regular board meeting, including a community transportation meetup held in Longmont, December meetings that involve the Arapahoe County mayors, managers, and commissioners, the Metro Mayor's Caucus, as well as Commuting Solutions, the Joint Transportation Smart Act hearing held earlier this month, my engagement with members of the Metro Chamber of Commerce's Leadership Denver program participants, a meeting just held yesterday with the Douglas County Commissioners, and my engagement earlier today in a panel discussion entitled Courageous Leadership as part of a workshop for participants of the Texas Transit Institute leadership. Pertaining to both community value and employee ownership, I will share information regarding the stock show parade, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Parade, and regarding community value, customer excellence, and financial success. I will briefly discuss the Front Range Passenger Rail Board retreat in which I participated in December, as well as a board meeting held immediately following and a retreat, and then a board of directors meeting held this past Friday, January 27th. Speaking to the priorities of community value, customer excellence, employee ownership, and financial success, I will discuss the establishment of a temporary sales outlet in Boulder. And regarding customer excellence, I will share an update regarding customer appreciation events held in November and December of last year, as well as the ongoing RTD My Ride account-based ticketing transition. So with that, as we transition to community value with more specificity, on Friday, December 2nd, Director Tisdale and I attended the Arapahoe County Mayors, Managers, and Commissioners meeting, during which I presented an overview of efforts to restore service to the R line, which had reopened earlier that same week following the September derailment incident. Additionally, I presented information on the Zero Air for Better Air initiative from 2022 and the takeaways we were able to glean through our analysis. Also discussed the Call for Projects Partnership Program, which you all heard about this evening from Mr. Fusa, regarding the Citizens Advisory Committee and the presentation in which they had. And of course, the system-wide fare study and equity analysis that is in full swing, and the third phase of community engagement, of which this the board will hear next month in the February cycle as the project team comes forward and provides an update. On Saturday, December 3rd, I joined Mayor Joan Peck of the City of Longmont, in addition to Director Davison, who served on a panel along with me and Director Geisinger, now Chair Geisinger, was in attendance at a well-attended community transportation meeting held in Longmont, during which time I presented an update on the Northwest Rail Peak Service Study, as well as potential Front Range passenger rail partnerships with the agency, more specifically the Colorado 119 Bus Rapid Transit Project, and again, the Call for Projects Partnership Program. The following Monday, December 5th, I met with the Metro Mayor's Caucus, specifically the Transportation Committee, to share takeaways from the August 2022 Zero Fare for Better Air initiative, as well as information regarding the Call for Projects Partnership. You could deduce there's a theme there as we have been out talking to a myriad of our partners, recognizing that there's an opportunity for us to connect and provide some localized services to connect people to the broader transportation network. And then additionally, conversations ensued with the Mayor Metro's Caucus as relates to the agency's transit policing efforts, including leveraging cost savings from our third party security contract and utilizing those dollars to the expansion of sworn police officers for the Regional Transportation District and our collaborative theft prevention partnership with Boulder Police Department. And finally, an update on RTD's People Power. Later that week, on Wednesday, December 7th, I presented to the Commuting Solutions Organization and shared takeaways from the 2022 Zero Fare for Better Air initiative, as well as the Call for Projects Partnership Program. Our efforts collectively as we strive to restore a welcome transit environment. The fare study was a topic of discussion once again, and the Northwest Rail Peak Service Study. I, along with Chair Geisinger and Directors Whitmore and Guzman, attended the Joint Transportation Smart Act hearing on Tuesday, January 17th. Chair Geisinger did speak to the new composition of the board, as well as the officers. I addressed members of the respective House and Senate Transportation Committees to briefly share status updates regarding our people power, recognizing that we're a labor-intensive organization. That's top of mind for a myriad of different audiences, and quite naturally recurring themes once again with our system-wide fare study and equity analysis, and of course, Zero Fare for Better Air initiative, recognizing that we acknowledge the leadership and support of our legislative leadership in reference to putting forth an investment to provide zero fare for the betterment of the air quality here in the metro region. On Thursday, January 19th, I met with participants of the Denver Metro Chambers Leadership, a Denver program. For those that may be unfamiliar, it's an 11-month program that develops actively engaged civic leaders and community champions through in-depth experiences with close network of lasting personal and professional relationships. The premise behind this engagement was to provide them with information relative to some issues that may be prevalent as it relates to transportation, public transport, I should say, within the Denver metro region, provided information about data points and made recommendations of resource materials along with others with whom they may want to engage. And the Community Impact Project of the group with whom I engaged dealt with a range of transportation issues, and they're going to hone in on what that may be. And I'd be remiss not to acknowledge that my colleague, Adam Phipps, who leads the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, joined me in that session. Just yesterday, Director Bouquet and Director Tisdale, who was virtual, and Government Relations Officer Michael Davies and I traveled to Castle Rock to meet with the Douglas County Commissioners to discuss the state of RTD, to talk about how we could work in a more collaborative fashion. The meeting was well received by all participants, and I provided some insight into our people power, of course, the fare study and equity analysis, and the Call for Projects Partnership Program, and the nexus with the county, as well as public safety and security concerns that had been broached as well during the course of our engagement. And just earlier today, I engaged with participants of the Texas Transit Leadership Institute, comprised of 25 transit agency executives in various roles. The Institute is the Texas Department of Transportation's leadership program for small, urban, and rural transit operators. And the topic of the panel discussion in which I participated was courageous leadership. Transitioning to community value and employee ownership. For the first time in the more than 60-year history of the National Western Stock Show Parade, RTD board members, including Directors Williams and Bouquet, and employees throughout the agency participated in the event. RTD's horse-drawn float resembled a bus, and employees held signs encouraging spectators to take RTD services. It's my understanding it was well received by all. If you recall at the special board meeting, our colleague Brian Bigliolino referenced this under other matters, and we had the opportunity to promote the usage of our commuter rail line being the N-Line and bus route 48 to the stock show. The parade brought more than 50,000 spectators to lower and upper downtown Denver. And as a result of the agency's participation, RTD was crowned the reserve champion. On Monday, July 16th, which was the holiday recognizing slain civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Director Bouquet, and members of staff from across the agency marched the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Parade. And the parade is one of the longest running and largest MLK celebrations in the nation. In reference to the duration of the parade, or the parade route, I should qualify, it was nearly 3 miles, and approximately 60,000 participants walked from City Park to Civic Center Park to celebrate the work of Dr. King Jr. As I transition quickly to talk about the Front Range Passenger Rail Board retreat I participated in, I want to provide a gentle reminder for some and orientation for others that I serve on the Front Range Passenger Rail as a non-voting member representing the Regional Transportation District, recognizing the intersectionality with this entity and potential opportunities as we look at passenger rail along the Front Range. So with that as a backdrop, on December 8th and 9th of 2022, I took part in the Front Range Passenger Rail Board retreat, during which time members of the board discussed the varying interests and visions for success for Front Range Passenger Rail. We outlined legal parameters, a service development plan, and the group's decision-making process, and identified work items and priorities for the 2023 and 2024 calendar years. I also attended the Front Range Passenger Rail Board meeting immediately following the retreat, and just participated this past Friday in the first board meeting of January 27th. And I want to share that at the Longmont meetup that took place in December, the executive director and general manager of Front Range Passenger Rail was also on that committee. And when we were at the SMART Act before the state legislature, the executive director and chair of Front Range Passenger Rail were in attendance and spoke from the vantage point that there is clear partnership with RTD as we forge this new trail. With that, I would like to share in closing from a customer appreciation vantage point. During the months of November and December, our communications engagement team leveraged some great holiday happenings in and around the district and at Civic Center and Union Station, to be more specific. During the event, staff were able to thank customers for using RTD services, and these two events coincided with a targeted marketing campaign called Holiday Happenings on social media, for which the agency promoted several holiday-themed events and how customers could take transit to them. As of January 19th, 2023, customer care has transitioned over 13,000 previous generation My Cards to the new My Ride accounts. And it represents nearly 93% of the number of previous generation cards in use between January 2021 and July 2022. By December 16th, 2022, all new validators previously experiencing technical problems were replaced by the vendor as agreed upon. The system appears to be fully functioning, and we are in the final stages of acceptance testing with the vendor, and we're just about at completion. And then rounding out my report, and I recognize this is long because we're going from November and December and here to January, regarding the strategic priority of employee ownership, I was fortunate to be able to engage with over 30 new employees running or ranging the gamut here at the organization during the new hire orientation session held last Monday, January 23rd. Additionally, as we talk about people power, and Charlene Pelleggi, our Chief People Officer, will be presenting to the Operations and Safety Committee in March, but wanted to share that I have been able to participate along with members of leadership and people and employees from our People Office that attended several operator graduation ceremonies over the past few months, ranging from bus and rail operators to engineers on commuter rail and conductors. And the volume of new employees joining the agency speaks to the efficacy of the recruitment efforts underway. And I am encouraged to see the progress in this area. And with that, Madam Chair, I will conclude my remarks. Thank you very kindly for the opportunity to present before this body.
Phew, thank you. 3 months, it's a lot, huh? Great. Director Broom, you have a question.
Thank you. I'll try and make it a long question so she can catch her breath. I noticed on tonight's agenda that we recognized 3 bus operators that retired. And in the newsletter that came out this past week, it looked like in the past month or so, we've brought on at least 25 operators. Have we now turned the corner in terms of filling some of the vacancies?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Of course.
So thank you very kindly, Director Broom, for your question. We are now at a point where we would qualify ourselves to being on a recovery mode, whereby we have more people, I would say, joining the agency than we have exiting. But with that as a backdrop, we still have quite a few vacancies. Budgeted positions, we have 3,199, and we're probably at 2,600 employees holistically. That spans the gamut of all the classifications that we have. But what we're clearly are seeing, what we netted last year, we hired approximately 410 new employees, where we lost 307. So I'm sorry, I had that wrong. I apologize. We basically were able to net 307 new employees. And let me follow up, because I'm speaking off the top of my head from yesterday, and I don't want to misquote, but this will be coming to you all. But just yesterday when I met with the Douglas County Commissioners, I was talking about this, but we are outpacing our exits. And so that's how I'll qualify it, because I know this is being recorded and I want to be transparent, and I just don't have those numbers at my fingertips. But we will be making a full presentation, our Chief People Officer, in March at the Operations Committee, and we will have information relative to all of our recruitment strategies and retention strategies, because they go hand in hand, sir. So thank you for that question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Williams.
I just didn't want Director Guzman to be left out. He was also at the stock show with Director Bouquet and I, and he can dance. So we remember that he was there, don't we, Director Bouquet?
Thanks for that correction.
Thank you. I apologize, as I was not there. I was unaware, and my intentions were deliberate. So thank you very much, Director Williams, for acknowledging Director Guzman's participation. That's very important.
If you had been there, you would not have forgotten it, believe me.
Director Bouquet.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just remember a lot of colds and getting people excited, and Director Williams shouting, "You can take the bus to the stock show." So that was good advertising. My note is just regarding just a quick thank you, Ms. Johnson and also Mr. Davies, for coming all the way down, or going all the way down to Castle Rock and attending and speaking with Commissioners Layden, Teal, and Thomas. I think they were all very enthusiastic, and I think it was a really good message that ultimately left from that meeting. Big thing again going forward is the emphasis on partnerships going forward as an agency, and I really appreciate the presentation that that you showed, and really appreciate you taking the time, and again, Mr. Davies taking the time to come on down. I think it was a very successful meeting, and looking forward to the future of Douglas County Partnerships and RTD. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. I was able to retrieve the information that Director Broom asked, so if you will indulge, I can just answer that question quickly.
Great.
So
Sure.
as it relates to the employee numbers that I was speaking about, so in comparison, in 2021, we hired throughout the agency 302 employees. In 2022, we hired 708. In 2021, we had 1,165 employees that separated from the agency. In 2022, we had 401. So when I was talking about being on the upswing holistically, that's where we're going. So these numbers are current as of about 3 weeks ago when I went before the SMART Act Committee. And so as we look at active employees, we're up to 2,631 employees where we have budgeted positions, both full-time and part-time, equivalent to 3,199. So you all will be getting information in a formalized presentation from Ms. Pileggi. So stay tuned as we continue to make strides. So thank you very kindly for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. No further questions. I don't see any other hands raised. All right. Our next item is unanimous consent. There are no items for unanimous consent this evening. There are 3 recommended actions listed as items 16A through C. The first recommended action, the 2023 committee appointments. And the action is for the Board of Directors to ratify the 2023 standing committee appointments. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Director Williams.
Second.
I heard Director Williams as the movement and Director Broom as the second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Are there any no votes on this motion? Right. With 15 yes votes and 0 no votes and 0 abstentions, the motion to amend passes, the motion to approve passes. That's it. Thanks. Okay, the second recommended action is approval of the proclamation for Zero Fare for Better Air initiative. This is for the Board of Directors to approve the proclamation recognizing contributions to the successful Zero Fare for Better Air initiative. Do we have a motion?
Okay, so moved, Director Williams.
Looks like you're the movement tonight, Director Williams.
Okay.
Second, Director Tisdale.
Okay, I heard Director Williams as the movement and Director Tisdale as the second. Is there discussion?
Director Guzman has his hand up.
Great. Director Guzman?
Sorry, I just want to make sure this is the approval with the corrected language.
I'm sorry, I can't understand you.
This is to approve the proclamation with the corrected language.
Yeah, it's to approve the proclamation. The discussion is now to approve the proclamation, and then I will make a motion to amend or ask for a motion to amend. Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the proclamation? Okay. I would like to make a motion to amend. This was sent out earlier. It's the section that reads, whereas the RTD board thanks the Alliance to Transform Transportation, which includes Denver Region COPERG, Denver Streets Partnership, Green Latinos, Servicios de la Raza, Conservation Colorado, NAACP, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana State Conference, Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, SWEEP, Bicycle Colorado, ATU Local 1001, and NRDC. The board also appreciates the support of Greater Denver Transit, and my motion is to add our local governments and TMOs.
I'm going to second that.
Madam Chair, I think it maybe would be more appropriate if one of us made the motion, since you're chair. But if that, okay, so if that's the case, I will make the motion, and I think you already have a second.
Okay, I hear
Thank
Director Whitmore, and the second is Director Williams. All right, is there discussion on the second? Is that your, I mean, on the amendment? No. All right, all in favor, or are there any no votes on the amendment? Okay, the amendment passes with 15 yeses and 0 no votes. Is there discussion on the main motion? Director Deschel?
Yeah, thank you so much, Director Geisinger. I know that transit in every industry is full of acronyms, and just for the record and for the public, would you mind just reading out? I know the proclamation lists the various acronyms. Would you mind reading out what those are so folks know about the great work of the organizations that are out there who helped us with this?
Of course, and in fact, what I'd like to do, I think I still have it up, is just read the proclamation. If I may. God, I had it up a minute ago. I think I can find it here in a second. And to answer I'll answer that question first. I see COPERG is the Colorado Public Interest Research Group. The SWEEP is the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. And NRDC is the Natural Resources Defense Council. NAACP is in there. I think that is well known. National Association for the Advancement of Colored Persons, I think. So the proclamation recognizing contributions to the successful Zero Fare for Better Air initiative. Whereas the Regional Transportation District Board of Directors appreciates the success of the Zero Fare transit services in August 2022 through the initiative Zero Fare for Better Air. Whereas RTD experienced a 22% increase in ridership from July 2022 to August 22. Customer and constituents reported a positive experience when utilizing RTD services during Zero Fare for Better Air. And RTD directors heard from appreciative constituents, and frontline employees, supervisors, and RTD Police Department reported no significant increases in public safety and security issues. Whereas the RTD Board of Directors sincerely appreciates the efforts of Governor Polis, his staff, and the Colorado Energy Office in supporting this plan to enhance public transportation in Colorado and specifically in the RTD. Whereas the RTD Board of Directors offers a very special thank you to the legislative authors of Senate Bill 22-180. The board thanks Senator Faith Winter, Senator Nick Heinrichsen, Representative Matt Gray, and Representative Jennifer Bacon for sponsoring this legislation and for their continuing dedication to improving public transit. Whereas the RTD board thanks the Alliance to Transform Transportation, which includes Denver Region, COPERG, Denver Streets Partnership, Green Latinos, Servicios de la Raza, Conservation Colorado, NAACP, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana State Conference, Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, SWEEP, Bicycle Colorado, ATU Local 1001, and NRDC. The board also appreciates the support of Greater Denver Transit and our local governments and TMOs. Whereas the RTD board thanks RTD staff members and our frontline workers and members of ATU 1001. The teams worked in close partnership to make this initiative a success. Whereas the RTD board thanks all customers who made the effort to utilize RTD services during Zero Fare for Better Air, and to those who continued to ride. Whereas RTD shares the commitment to the regional and state goals addressing ground level ozone and greenhouse gases, and shares the commitment to help Coloradans who rely on public transit to get to their places of employment, medical appointments, and other major activity centers. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the RTD Board of Directors that Zero Fare for Better Air and RTD's partnership with the Polis administration, members of the Colorado General Assembly, and other stakeholders was a success for RTD. RTD's board looks forward to working together to expand the Zero Fare for Better Air in the future. Let me get back here. I'll now call for the vote. Did we just pass this? Or did we just pass the amendment? We passed it. All right. All right, good. The final recommended action is support of House Bill 23-1101, Ozone Season Transit Grant Program Flexibility. The recommended action is for the Board of Directors to adopt a support position on HB 23-1101, ozone season transit grant program flexibility and to support changes to the bill to allow more flexibility that is in support of RTD's goals. Do we have a motion
So moved, Director Whitmore.
and a second?
Second, Director Williams.
Okay, I heard Director Whitmore as the movement and Director Williams as the second. I will call for discussion on this motion, but I believe that, Michael Davies has made it back from the Northwest Rail open house and found a place to give his report. Mr. Davies, do you have some staff report to provide us?
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the board. Michael Davies, Government Relations Officer. I'll just give a brief report that was also given to the Executive Committee on this item. Pleased to bring before you a recommendation to support HB 23-1101 Ozone Season Transit Grant Program flexibility and to support changes to the bill to allow more flexibility that is in support of RTD's goals. And I'll go into that in just a moment. So House Bill 23-1101 amends Senate Bill 22-180 that created the grant program that allowed RTD to offer zero fare for better air. Two primary changes that impact RTD within that bill. The first change is that the bill allows unspent money that was available to a grant through a grant received by RTD in 2022 to be available in 2023. And then the second change is to remove the 20% RTD match that was applicable to the 2022 grant. And this bill removes that 20% local match requirement and puts RTD in parity with all the other transit agencies in the state with applying for funds through this grant program. And then just to touch on the changes and the discussion that happened in the Executive Committee and the supported changes were the way the language is worded with regards to that unspent money in 2022 versus 2023 was it is for unspent money for a grant received, and the Executive Committee supported changes to that bill to broaden that from just a grant received to all eligible funding that was unspent in 2022 and available to RTD. We'd like to see that moved and available in 2023. So it is ultimately creating more flexibility with those unspent funds. And again, these funds have already been appropriated by the General Assembly. And this is just creating another opportunity for RTD to take advantage of all the funds that were appropriated to the agency through this grant program. So I'll end there and happy to take any questions on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Whitmore.
Yes, thank you very much. Michael, because of the way the bill's crafted and the carryover, we have no fiscal note on this to the state general fund on this bill, right? So there's no other expenses, which certainly simplifies the process of going through the legislature. Am I correct on that assumption?
Yes, Director Whitmore. So by removing the 20% requirement, it certainly eliminates a portion of funding that would have been required for RTD to put into this grant program. I guess there is always a potential that any funding that RTD spends on a zero fare program above the total allotted money that's available in 2023, that could result in a fiscal impact to the agency, but that would be a decision for the board when we look at the application process that's put together with by the Colorado Energy Office.
Okay, Madam Chair, if I may. So I guess my reference was to fiscal. Obviously, there could be expenses for us if needed or warranted, but no general fund hit on the state of Colorado with this program because of the carryover. If I read the fiscal note correctly, I think I did. But anyway, one item that's not directly germane to RTD, but I found it interesting that there's flexibility written into the bill for other transit agencies to use this program when the timing is right for them on ozone. issues. The ozone issues in the Western Slope are not the same as they are here. So I think that's great, and it enhances the program for other transit agencies to do their best to help with ozone when the time is appropriate for their geography. So anyway, thank you. Enough said.
Thank you, Director Whitmore. Any further discussion? Director Rusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question for Mr. Davies, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. You mentioned the word amendment a couple of times, and I just want to clarify, we are talking about a bill that amends statute. We're not talking about a bill that's currently introduced and an amendment to the bill that hasn't been presented before the committee. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I think if the board approves this position with the changes to amend, RTD would file an amend position and testify that the board has supported amending this bill with the changes that I described.
Okay, but you don't have language for us to see.
No, not at this time.
Oh, well, I'm in support of the bill, and as a trust exercise, I'll be a yes. But for me personally, it would be helpful if even concept language were shared, so we have time to follow up with questions. And then, Madam Chair, I don't know if this is a point where I can make a comment on in this phase, or we're just in a follow-up question phase, clarification.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So the bill at least as introduced, I had noticed that the flexibility is such that a grant recipient could use the funds for free fares programs that it already has. We do have a couple of those, like Mall Ride, and I'm definitely a yes tonight and in support of this bill. Thank you so much for your work, everyone. But I just wanted to put out there that I think it's just incumbent upon us as an agency to make sure for this fund and any future monies that we might receive that we apply that to programs that actually can demonstrate a reduction in emissions. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I have a question in that regard, but go ahead, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in terms of the proclamation that we just passed, and then the support statement that we are doing about 1101, assuming we vote yes, which we will, how will we be letting the legislature know? So obviously we will be testifying in committee, or Mr. Davies, you will be, and GM CEO Johnson will be, and our lobbyists will be potentially as well, or they'll be lobbying the legislators on committee and also on the House and Senate side. But I mean, are we sending that both of those to them by email, or are we by mail, or how is that working? And then second part of a question is, are we sending this to county commissioners, mayors, city council members, and all the members of that we mentioned, all the different organizations that we mentioned in the proclamation, so that they know that we appreciate their efforts in support?
Chair, if I may. Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Director. I can't speak totally to exactly how we would send out the resolution. I know Chair Geisinger is going to an event tomorrow and will present that. And I'm certainly happy to work with the board office to make sure that we can get copies out of the resolution. With regards to your question on the amendment, one, we would file that we've taken a position to amend this bill, and then ultimately with the discussion and the changes that I described tonight, and I think that intent is certainly clear on my behalf of what we would be seeking. We would work with bill authors through our lobbyists to seek those changes and support an amendment that would accomplish those changes.
I guess building on Director Rusha's line of questioning. So the bill that was passed last year, it's law. It's not a bill anymore. And so basically we are supporting passage of a bill this year to amend the current statute. Is that maybe a better way to put it? Is that right?
The current bill would amend last year's bill or current statute, and we are seeking to make an amendment to this year's bill. And really, if I can maybe clarify exactly the difference there is unspent money that RTD received in 2022 for the grant that we received for Zero Fare for Better Air. But RTD did not apply for the full amount that was available to RTD, which was $11 million. We applied for less. So the unspent money that would be flexible and moved into 2023 currently is a lesser amount than the full appropriated amount that was available through the full 2022 allotment of appropriated money that the General Assembly gave to this grant program. So it is just expanding to use all of the available money that is unspent and creating more flexibility for what is available for 2023.
Okay. And then finally, sort of building on Director Whitmore's line of questioning. And so if we go from 80% to 100% of reimbursement, and obviously we haven't seen the fiscal note yet, but would that mean that we would see a smaller amount on this bill? Because now they're not just funding 80%, they're funding 100%. So are we looking for more money to be put in to this effort, or about the same, or is there going to be less? And actually, my concern is that it'll be just a wash, where we're just going to get about the same amount of money, whether it's 80% or 100%. I just want to make sure that we actually receive more funding this year, and that we will use all of it, hopefully.
Yeah, certainly, Director. This just simply allows that funding to be available, and for when RTD goes forward with the application process, which of course the Energy Office has to initiate that process and put out a call for applications. And in our case, it's really a call for one application because we're the only eligible entity for this pot of money through this grant program. This just allows more funding to be available to RTD to take advantage of in our application. The difference is that we do not have to put in that match. So therefore, last year, the matching funds came out of RTD's budget. This year, we do not have to identify that match as a result of their change in this bill with the 20% match requirement removed.
Thank you.
Director Rusha.
I forgot to put my hand down, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Apologize.
That happens all the time. Director Whitmore.
Thank you, Michael, and I apologize in sitting through some of the meetings prior to this for this relatively benign question, but we have the bill up in committee on Thursday afternoon, and I just wanted to get a sense from you, the proposed amendments that we're blessing, are they blessed by the bill sponsors, and are they fully aware of what our ask is? I assume they are, but I just want to double check on that, or do I have my wires crossed again today?
No, Director Whitmore. I think the point of the board taking a position on this is really for us to then confirm with the bill sponsors that the language that they may intend to offer as an amendment is one we support. And if they are going to offer an amendment and we get that confirmation, I can't speak to that the bill author or any author is going to offer this amendment for sure right now. But if we get that confirmation, then we can lobby other members of the committee to support that amendment as well.
Okay, and I appreciate that. That would be great if we are made aware of that as soon as we know as well, because some of us are getting a few calls from some committee members. So thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Director Deschel.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just to provide some insight for folks for the benefit of the full board about the discussion that was had at executive committee regarding adding that amendment language, if I may, it seems like there's a lot of questions about it. May benefit everyone to be part of that conversation. I was the one who brought forward that suggestion, and the logic there is that it's important for our lobbyists, including in our government relations officer and government relations team, to have flexibility. And when this originally came forward, there's still some changes we want to make. And so adopting a flat out support position may prejudice our ability to further amend the bill to further our goals. And the other one would be that that amendment needs to be to further RTD's goals. Given for those of us who have been around the legislature, things happen quickly, they move quickly, and they don't always look as good as they sound in reality. And so the intent of the amendment in further of RTD's goals is to give the flexibility for our team to say, yes, RTD is supportive of this. However, there's a few changes that we want to see. Given that session is very young, I'm guessing we'll probably have updates on this as it works its way through, or if it gets out of committee. I don't know if we know if that's likely or not, but just wanted to provide that background for folks to help better explain the logic behind the language. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Deschel. All right, Director Rusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we have 2 votes before us, or I'm reading that we are voting to support the bill, but with an amendment. And in our agenda packet, we have the introduced bill in front of us. And so in addition, we cannot register both support and amend. So I wonder if the motion is actually an amend position per what Mr. Davies shared with us. And then, so I guess I will take it back to you, Madam Chair, to figure out where we are in Robert's rules. But we can't vote it on 2 things at once, and we can't have a subsequent vote just because we voted for one thing. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So, and I think that we're actually talking about an amend position and not a support position, which I would still be in support of the amendment.
Okay, we'll hear from Director Tisdale, and we'll come back to that. Director Tisdale.
Well, actually, if I may, Madam Chair, I was going to address that directly at DRCOG and at the Colorado Municipal League, for example. We would always either support, oppose, or support with amendments. Those are the 3 positions that we used to take when I chaired the policy committee at CML and was vice chair of DRCOG. So we do have the opportunity here as well for a single motion, which is support with amendments. And that would be, and I think Mr. Davies would confirm that, but that's my take on it.
Okay, that may be a motion to amend our recommended action. Michael, any comments there?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And speaking to Director Rusha's point, when we file official position with the Secretary of State's office, you only have 3 options: amend, support, or oppose. So I think my recommendation would be that the board is, and following on this discussion and the discussion in executive committee, we'd be taking an amend position when we file officially with the Secretary of State's office. For the purposes of this, the language in the recommended action in the board report, it is a support position with changes. And I think the intent of the discussion in the executive committee was to take an amend position. So I think it's just a difference of wording, but to Director Rusha's point, the official position filed by RTD's board of directors is an amend position with the Secretary of State on HB 22 or HB 23-1101.
so perhaps it would be, I think we could vote on it as a single item, as Director Tisdale said, but perhaps it would be clear to say for the Board of Directors to adopt a support with amendment position on HB 23-1101 ozone season transit grant program flexibility, and to support changes to the bill to allow more flexibility that is in support of RTD's goals. Would that be helpful? I'll start with you, Mr. Davies.
If others are in agreement, that the intent is clear to me with that. Again, it would be an amend position that we would file officially with the Secretary of State's office. You can't file a support with amend, but knowing the discussion that we've had in the resolution that the board just passed, we know the board feels that Zero Fare for Better Air was a success, and we can speak to that as part of our testimony, certainly.
Would someone want to make an amendment to this? Want to propose an amendment? Director Deschel?
Sure. I move to amend the recommended action to read as follows. For the RTD Board of Directors to support and amend, to adopt and file and amend position on HB 23-1101 ozone season transit grant program flexibility, and to support changes to the bill to allow more flexibility that is in support of RTD's goals.
May I suggest that we want to go on record as supporting the bill, and that maybe it makes sense to say to adopt a support and amend position?
That's not an option.
No, well, it will be filed differently, but this is a recommended action from the board. I guess it would be a friendly amendment if you're open to that. It will be filed in as an amend position, but I think it's important to say that we support this bill.
Yes, let me give it the old college. Let me, if I may, try again.
Great.
Move to amend the recommended action such that it reads in its entirety for the Board of Directors to adopt a support and amend position on House Bill 23-1101 ozone season transit grant flexibility, which will be filed with the Colorado Secretary of State as an amend position to support changes to the bill to allow more flexibility that is in support of RTD's goals.
Do we have a second?
Second, Tisdale.
Second. Okay, I hear a motion from the movement is Director Deschel, the second from Director Tisdale. Is there any comment or discussion on the amendment? Okay, are there any no votes? All right, on the amendment passes with 15 yes votes and 0 no votes. Is there any further discussion on the motion itself as amended? And are there any no votes? All right, the motion as amended passes, recommended action as amended passes with 15 yes votes and 0 no votes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Davies, for the report. Next item is report of director activities. Would anyone like to report on their activities for the months of December and January? Director Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to hear that we are doing this. This is something that we used to do, and I'd like to see us do it. In January, I attended the WTS Women in Transportation Awards, as mentioned earlier by the chair. I also attended DRCOG's Advanced Mobility Partnership Working Group. I had a great time at the Stock Show Parade with Directors Guzman and Bouquet. I attended CDOT's Transit Monthly Meeting. I attended the Denver Streets Partners Steering Committee, Denver Moves Cherry Creek Monthly Review. I had my RTD risk assessment interview. I attended the APTA ZEV committee and the RTD ZEV committee. and I attended the Curbside Action Plan Mobility Focus Group. Did miss a number of meetings that I normally attend, will be reporting on in the future, but I was out of the country part of the month. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Williams. Great job. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We had the APTA Board Talk Live regarding safety and security, which was conducted virtually yesterday as a regular outreach activity of APTA's Transit Board Member Committee, which I chair. It was a great discussion by GM CEO India Birdsong Terry for the Greater Cleveland RTA and the GCRTA Police Chief Deirdre Jones. Watch your mailbox for an email from APTA with a link to the video for the presentation and the slide deck. I think you will find it very interesting and helpful. Last week, I participated in the meeting of APTA's Diversity and Inclusion Council Steering Committee. Please contact me if you wish to see the materials from that meeting. And then also last week, I was at the Transportation Solutions Arapahoe County Strategic Planning session, and lots going on with TSAC and obviously with all of the various local coordinating councils that we have around the state. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. Director Guzman.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll lower my hand before I forget. So it's been a busy month. January came charging in like one of the trains at the station. We did the Community Solutions Legislative Breakfast, and I also went with the Northwest Transit Community. C is the northwest corner of Denver, and so getting to meet up with the folks from Lafayette and Louisville.
Point of personal privilege.
They're a little hard to understand you, Director Guzman.
Yeah, would you mind calling in the audio? A lot of times I've found that it makes it a lot easier when it comes through.
Or you can turn off your camera while you're speaking, and that might give you some more bandwidth.
We'll try that again.
Is this better?
Speak up if you can too, please.
Is this better, or can I call it?
That is better.
Okay. So January started quick. I went to the Community Solutions Legislative Breakfast. I did participate in the stock show parade, but only as an elector direct at that point, because it was a few days before swearing. I went to the Boots and Business, and I also got to go to the rodeo. So I'm really excited we participated with the National Western this year. A lot of reading and responding to new information from constituents and community groups. Participated in the Finance Committee, the CAC, did all of my orientation meetings, met with the legal counsel, the CEO, GM, thank you for your time, and with Mr. Summers for media preparation. Today, got involved with the Latinos in Transit group, and I'm really excited to lead in that area. Also did my risk assessment, and I am looking forward to being involved in the Dr. Cog group as well as we go forward. So I just wanted to point all of that out and say thank you for the opportunity and for all of your help and support. All of the directors have been great, and the office staff has been amazing.
Great. Thanks so much, Director Guzman. Director Whitmore.
Just quickly, monthly basis, many of us attend the North Area Transit Alliance meeting, which gathers together Adams County and sometimes Broomfield and the cities in the North Metropolitan area. They met last week. We had a lengthy meeting and good discussion, and always appreciate staff support at that meeting. Michael Davies was there and helped out with some clarifying questions and some programming highlights, including our partnership program. And then a little bit earlier in the month, met with 3 North Metro mayors as we meet usually the second Friday of the month for breakfast, just to keep pace with what's going on in the cities in the district and beyond. So that's a regular monthly kind of schedule for Director Busick and I, so I won't bring it up every month, but just a reminder as we start the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Director Rusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a wonderful meeting with Greater Denver Transit last week. I would recommend my fellow directors, if you haven't checked in with them lately, do so. Richard is just as entertaining in a one-on-one as he is in public comment. And I just found the information very informative as it relates to my district and constituents within B. I also took some kind of informal meetings with Colorado Cross Disability Coalition and partner organizations. And I wanted just to report back that while there are some areas of concern where we might be able to improve regarding paratransit and transitioning from pilot into more permanent service with on-demand, overall, I have heard now from several people that that RTD has really improved services for people with disabilities over the last couple of years. And so if I may, I'd also just like to commend our CEO and GM, Ms. Johnson, for that. I think she's shown a lot of leadership, and I think we've improved our standing with various constituent groups, and I wanted to recognize that. I've also gotten some inquiries from constituents in Montbello regarding the state of bus stops. I followed up with Dottie for a response, so if someone from Dottie is listening, I appreciate when you're able to get back to me. I also, I just wanted to note, for those who might be listening, or maybe fellow new board members, I am always open for comments, read everything, especially stop signs. And I did have an issue with my email, or wasn't receiving all emails. So I'm working with IT just to ensure that doesn't happen again. So if I am slow to respond to anyone on the board, or you're not sending me an email from a recognized email address, it's not a matter of ignoring. And I'm happy to participate, listen, and show up when requested. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Rusha. Director Davidson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I'll keep it brief. A lot of things happened in the last 2 months, but something came to mind that I do attend the quarterly Colorado 7 Coalition meetings. For those that may not be familiar, up in the northern area here, Colorado 7 has seen quite a bit of growth and has quite a bit of growth planned, including some higher density development, including some affordable housing, and it's a challenging corridor. It's flagged by the North Area Mobility Study, or NAMS, that was done several years ago as a corridor that may involve express bus service. And at that meeting, this past quarterly meeting, which was this past Friday, it was suggested that one of the next 2 quarterly meetings will involve an in-person tour to go up and down the corridor. They expressed the coalition, which includes members from a number of the communities along the corridor, as well as CDOT, had expressed interest in having RTD involvement. We actually do plan to organize bus service from CDOT to go up and down the corridor. So I just would open up the invitation if directors are interested in that. Whether you're from the area or not, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to coordinate once we have the schedule. And then also, I'm sure Ms. Johnson and staff will be talking a little bit about this, because there was this request to have some folks from RTD there. So I just figured I'd highlight that as one of the meetings and one of the outcomes. So thank you.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? We still have 2 items on the agenda for discussion. First one is the plan for remote versus in-person meetings. And the idea that a couple of ideas came out of the executive committee. And I think what we suggested in executive committee is that we would put forward these ideas and also other ideas that come from the board tonight, and then send out a poll and have people vote on what they prefer to do. The ideas that came out of the executive committee, one of them was to do every other month in person, where the board meeting and the committee meetings would be in person. So we would start in February with in-person meetings, and then the other month would be remote. And I should say, even in-person meetings, we would, we have Zoom now. If you're out of the country, if you're out of town, if you're not, if you have a reason you can't be here, you can always attend remotely. The other proposal that came out of the executive committee was that all meetings should just be in person at this point. And I would just say that, let's open it up and have the discussion. I think it's important that we not say, do what you want, that they're hybrid, come if you want, because I'm on another board that does that, and very few people show up. The idea of doing in-person meetings is that we do get back together. We can sit down beforehand and have dinner together. It's what we always did. It's a different experience. I know many of you have never had an in-person meeting in the RTD boardroom, but they have just redone the hearing, the streaming and the Zoom and all of those options. And Ms. Parrish tells me that it's almost ready to go. They're waiting for some TVs to be put into the room apparently, but we're almost ready. So we could start in February. So the idea would be that we would send out, I'll work with the board office and get out hopefully tomorrow, a poll on what we would like to do. But those were the two suggestions: all meetings in person, every other month the meetings in person, and then the opposite months the meetings are remote. And if you can't attend, you can always attend remotely. So other suggestions, other discussion? Director Rosenthal, I saw your hand first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So not to add more choices to our
That's fine.
To our poll, but I think we should have all of our full board meetings in person. And that way we're all together at the same place and talking together and being able to work together. I think that's really critical. In terms of the committees, I'm more flexible for them to meet in person or remote. But I really do think it's very important to have all of our board meetings in person. Now, with the exception you noted, if somebody's out of town or, there's a snowstorm and, somebody's in Parker, let's just say, Director Bouquet or something like that, then I can understand, not being able to make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bouquet.
All right, thank you very much, Chair. So I guess somewhat of a new suggestion. Sorry to add on. I just wanted to throw it out there. Again, as one of our full-time employees as a school teacher down here in Douglas County School District, it's a little bit of a hike. I like the suggestion of having full board meetings being in person. I think that's more than fair. Again, this is coming from someone who's working full time. I could definitely make it at least once a month in person. I would suggest having our committee and ad hoc committee meetings be over Zoom. Again, I want to, caution my other directors regarding we have staff too that have to make this possible and working around their schedule. It's not just us as our 15 board directors. So my suggestion would be full in-person board meetings once a month for the full board meeting, and then have our committee and ad hoc meetings be virtual. I just bring that up because, as pointed out, we did not have any agenda items besides electing a chair and vice chair for our operations committee. And to be fully frank, I don't really want to drive all the way down or take the train all the way down to Denver just to vote for a chair and vice chair. I also would note that having the option for virtual for even our full in-person board meetings would be excellent. So that would be my big suggestion, would be in person once a month with our full board meetings, because we will have agenda items. I do agree that it is good for us to connect and actually see each other in person. My one thing would be Zoom meetings or virtual meetings for ad hoc and then standing committees. So that'd be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Guzman.
Whatever decision we make, I want to encourage the board to remember that we have a commitment to zero
Director
emissions.
Guzman, you need to speak up, please.
I'm doing my best. The board has a commitment to zero emissions, and we need to take that into consideration when we make this decision.
And so are you, great. Are you suggesting a different option or just to consider that? Okay. All right, thank you. Director Williams.
I have to agree with Director Guzman and Director Bouquet that we are committed to reducing emissions, and there is really not any reason that we need to meet in person other than we like to see each other. We want to have a meal beforehand. I'm perfectly happy to have every meeting possible be virtual, so that I work full-time also, as do a number of the board directors here. And I have to leave work early in order to get to RTD by 5:30, whereas I can get online wherever I am. And then I also have to get home at night, late in the dark. Some of our meetings, it's going to be 8 o'clock here, and I've been at work for 12 hours now. So I would like to recommend that unless it's necessary for us to meet in person, I'm thinking of our staff who have the same thing. I'm sure Ms. Johnson, and I'll just go down to Brian Welsh and Marie and Doug McLeod and Joe Fitzgerald and Melanie Snyder and Michael Davies have all been at work since 8 o'clock this morning. And it's probably much better for their health and for the health of our air if we all meet remotely. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Rusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question, or I just wanted to raise the concern, the point that when we do meet in person, if we can ensure that whatever room we're meeting in is wired appropriately so that folks listening in can hear us. There was a lot of difficulty trying to listen to the executive board meeting that was in person because that room wasn't set up. And I wanted to ask or put out there, if we are going to have some in-person meetings, and I think we will we still allow the public to comment remotely and Zoom in? I think it's important for us to keep that option open. We might have a duty to come down to Blake Street sometimes, but just to increase access for the community, I'd like to keep that remote option for individuals who'd like to do public comment. And then I also wanted to make a note about the time, and I think other folks have touched on this. Some of us do work day jobs with varying degrees of flexibility. And so I would just ask for the standing committees if they could take that into consideration. Not all of us are able to cut away in the middle of the day to join, and we might want to participate. But overall, I think this discussion has been fruitful, and I appreciate the being able to hear from other directors, because that certainly would impact my vote when it comes to it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I will say they have, that's what they've been working on in the room downstairs. And already, I know that the board office is getting bids for upgrading the sound in the conference room. And yes, public would be able to testify remotely. That's all good points. Director Busick.
Thanks, Chair Geisinger. I would also agree with Director Williams. However, if we do go back into in person, there are some of us that are just not comfortable doing that. We're still in the middle of a pandemic and a flu season and an RSV season. So for health reasons, you've got to have a virtual option for people that are simply not comfortable being in that room down in the basement. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
And I would say that raises another thought that, this is whatever we decide can be revisited in the near future.
Sure. And just clarification, I mean, you should be able to attend virtually, not just because there's a snowstorm or something else. It should be your choice. Thank you.
Okay. Just taking some notes here. Director Whitmore.
So I largely agree with Director Bouquet's idea. I think there is extreme value in meeting in person. And yes, there's risk to be considered, and we do need to have the options. I would be for board meetings in person or the every other month in person. You can't substitute getting to know your fellow board members and staff members as well virtually. We're one of the few entities that are comprised of elected officials that have gone so long without hardly any in-person meetings. And I think there's a transparency problem with that. Now, we all know we've had supply chain issues and AV equipment is very hard to come by. Then when you do get it, half the time it doesn't work and you start over. But I do think remote testimony needs to be accessible. It's utilized very well at the state capitol, where you have half the folks there testifying in person and the other half from all over the state, which is handy and obviously helps with pollution and ozone issues as well, and timing. So I am for a hybrid approach of some meetings in person, whether it's just board meetings every month or whether it's doing an alternation type scenario that somebody else had mentioned. But I do think we should move to some semblance of in-person meetings, especially at the board meeting level. Thanks, that's all.
Great. Director Deschel. Director Rusha, you still have your hand up. I assume that's okay. Director Deschel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, again, wanted to provide a bit of color to the discussion that was had, which put this on the agenda, which was that, and other folks in the executive committee, please feel free to correct me if I misspeak, which is that the intent is always to have a virtual option for the public, for public transparency, for remote testimony, for folks who can't make it, whatever the case may be. Second, the intent is that the survey will be a ranked choice vote survey. And that from today's discussion, we might have 17 options from 15 directors in the survey, but I think there's benefit to that, and I think it also sounds like from what I've been hearing that there's two different sort of decisions, right? One is, are we going to meet in person and how often? And the other is, what is the expectation that we hold of each other? Is it we're all there all the time? It's up to you, do what you want. And those to me are sort of two distinct issues that we may want to have two different surveys for, but I will leave that in the chair's discretion. But just wanted to provide that bit of extra color. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Director Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Up until 11 o'clock this morning, I was fully in support of having 100% participation for the board meetings in person. And I still am leaning toward that, recognizing that there are sometimes some circumstances beyond our control. I do like Director Bouquet's proposal that we offer the hybrid or something of that sort for the committee meetings. So I am still in support of the in-person board meetings with some possible exceptions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Director Catlin. And I think that goes to Director Deschel's point that we kind of have two different questions, but I think, well, I think that we're in a world now where if you can't make it, if you're out of town, if you're injured, if you have reasons, that you can't make it, that is always an option. Director Davidson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I don't envy your position of summarizing all these options or Ms. Parrish's, but I just wanted to, I had my hand up about the ranked choice voting, and I just would second what Director Deschel, and thank him for bringing that up, had said about, I think it's important whatever we do here, we lay out a couple options, we do ranked choice, so we all have a chance to, not just bet it all on one. And I just would add for the group, I'm personally open to a variety of different options. I think it's just the sooner we can get this calendared and make it predictable, the better. I definitely think that some time in person is really important. Our species wasn't successful because we're smart or strong, it's because we're social. So whether we like it or not, that hasn't changed about us. And I do think that it has an impact. So I'd be open to a variety of things. I figured I'd offer for the group that I would vote in support of something that is hybrid in the sense of, some sort of alternating. I initially was in favor of the monthly plan, all meetings in person 1 month and then off the next. I could easily switch over to the plan of board meetings every month. But I do think it's important we get together in person, and I do think it's really important we do a ranked choice vote on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I originally had argued for the notion that all the meetings should be in person. And I do recognize and I hear the concerns that are raised by my fellow directors. And there are some very legitimate concerns there that, give us pause. That said, there is no other elected board of which I am aware that continues to meet virtually, except for some study sessions and other of their committee meetings. But when the full body meets, no elected board is meeting virtually. Of course, there is always the option that if you are incapacitated or unavailable, you can participate virtually. We used to have people on the phone all the time before we had the pandemic. That's just the way we worked. If you couldn't make the meeting in person, you dialed in and you participated in the meeting. What's wrong with saying if you're incapacitated or if you are out of town, that you can participate? You're welcome. You're encouraged to participate, and you can do so virtually. So I guess my view is I come down on the side of, I think all of the full board meetings need to be in person with the virtual option available, and that the committee meetings could, at least for a while, continue to be virtual. And those are my thoughts, and I thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Ms. Parrish, you had something to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate to everyone that Zoom will continue. So even when we are in person, we will still have that option moving forward for the public and for the board. And for right now, our building is unavailable to guests. So when we do have in-person meetings for the board in the short term, depending on when those begin, it would only be the board members and staff at that time in those meetings until our building opens up to guests. But the meetings will be via Zoom as well in person. So they'll be able to see everything that you see, and they'll be able to participate in public comment as they do now.
Thank you very much. I'm going to skip over to Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to offer some further clarification to Ms. Parrish's comment. Recognizing that we are a public agency, the building has been closed because we've been under the executive order as related to COVID-19 pandemic. With the recent announcements that the president has made, we would be looking to adjust as we go forward. But to previous points that Director Busick shared as it relates to a myriad of different issues relative to public health and safety, i.e., COVID, RSV, flu, and people with compromised immune systems. We too do have outbreak sites still, but as we go forward, I just wanted to share as relates to the building being open, that position holistically. That would be up to the board to decide relative to what it is, but from a staff perspective, we do have a policy in place currently, so I wanted to share that. As we go forward, we wouldn't anticipate the building being open prior to May. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, got a couple here. That's another round here. Ms. Rusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize. I concur with Director Tisdale. I don't know of anybody that is still meeting remotely when it's the whole. So I would lean towards that option. Of course, always having remote meetings come up. And I also don't want to ask the staff what we can't do. And if we have staff who are still down at Blake Street at 8 o'clock at night, I know for me personally, this is, unless something comes up, I'll be there as well. But the subcommittees, being remote around us.
I can't hear the end of what you said there.
Sorry, I'm on RTD technology on the tablet. But now I lost what I said.
It was just the last line that I couldn't hear.
I apologize. I don't remember where it was. Just that if we ask it of staff, we should consider also showing up as well. And appreciate the clarification on public participation. I'm also not aware of any public buildings in Metro that are still closed when like the seat of government is meeting. So I would put it out there that as soon as possible, even if that's the day that we do open back up to the public when we have our meetings, particularly to allow public participation. It's meaningful to allow folks to come back if they want to. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Williams.
I want to point out that the other elected officials that we're talking about are all paid, and they have 3 or 4 staff per person, and they adjust their schedules accordingly. So if they're going to meet until 10 o'clock at night, they don't go to work. Their paid job until noon, and their support staff is the same. We, on the other hand, are essentially unpaid, and most of us have to work. So we have to go to our day job first, and then we have to come here. So whenever RTD can adjust with my boss, that I don't have to go to work until noon so that I can stay here till 8 o'clock, I'll be more interested in coming to 1660 Blake Street. Number 2, when we do our weighted poll, are we going to include our staff? We're going to ask them how they feel about being here at night. And they are paid, but I don't know if we can afford, and this would be Ms. Johnson's call, to allow them to come to work at noon so that they can be at 1660 Blake at the meeting until 8 o'clock at night. I feel really strongly about this. We cannot go back. We're not going back to riding horses. The world is not going back to what we used to do before the pandemic. And we are all here tonight. Everybody's doing well. Everybody's wherever they are. And we have been functioning, and the agency has been functioning, and this board has been functioning for 3 years just fine without meeting in person. And anybody who wants to meet in person, just call me. I'm happy to go to lunch in the daytime. I'm happy to have a committee meeting in the daytime, but I see absolutely no reason for this board to meet at night in person. Thank you. And now I'm done. Sorry.
Thank you. Director Rosenthal. Director Rusha, do you still want your hand up? Okay. Director
Thank you.
Rosenthal.
And I know this is my second bite at the apple. I think the operative word there was functioning, and that means we're working. We're making do. And I think if you look at the previous board, which I wasn't on, they met far more often, and they met in person. And so I think, and as I hear now, I wasn't on the board, but as I hear from previous members, they built relationships. And I think that is really critical at a time when so much is virtual. How do you build relationships with other board members so we make good decisions, better decisions, that we actually, and I'm going to be probably a little bit more blunt and honest and say, look, we have had board meetings of this board and previous boards, and I've seen in previous boards before that when I was watching board meetings when I wasn't on the board, of board members like sniping at each other and treating each other disrespectfully. And that comes when you don't know each other. And I think that's so critical that we get to know each other better. It's not just, we have a dynamic, and good governance comes from a dynamic when we get to know each other. Like 3, 4, 6 of us, without, all together, and we're mingling, and we're talking about ideas and talking about amendments and things like that. And all I'm asking is for once a month. And I think, the general manager, CEO can give allowances to staff that, coming in later and staying later, and again, I'm not trying to tell you, general manager, what to do with your job. I'm just saying there are ways that we can, allow for employees to have that. That was a good suggestion, Director Williams. So I really do feel very strongly that we do need to meet at least once a month. I do not believe that's too much to expect of any of us. We are elected officials. We run a very large agency, and I think it's important that we get to do our work together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I see Director Davidson and Deschelle, and then hopefully we can move on. Director Davidson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the second bite of the apple here. Not to throw another option in the mix here, but I'm about to show my my private sector roots here. It's pretty common to have quarterly business reviews, or QBRs. And, and Director Williams, you bring up some good points that the world's kind of moved on with board slam schedules. A structure that I've seen quite a bit is having board meetings that happen on a, more than quarterly basis, a monthly basis, happen virtually, so people join where they are, but still to preserve the collaboration time, and sometimes even stickier big topics that benefit from in-person discussion. Those go to the quarterlies. So I don't know if anyone wants to react to this, and I know we don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but it is an option we could consider, where, given that there's been good points, it sounds like there's some folks who would go all the way to everything in person. Some would say nothing in person. We could also start, and to your point, Chair Geisinger, we can change whatever we come up with here. We could start with something on a quarterly cadence and borrow a little bit from some of the private boards that have struck that kind of cadence. But the second thing I just wanted to ask was, and I certainly, General Manager Johnson, don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to comment on this, but staff time has come up several times. I'm wondering if you'd like to weigh in on whether there have been discussions, whether, yourself or others on the team, and if there are any preferences at this time. And certainly if not, I would welcome the comments as we make this final decision or consider our vote. But General Manager Johnson, anything you want to weigh in on?
Well, thank you very much, Director Davidson and Madam Chair, if I may proceed. I'll just share that several of us are in the office. I'm actually sitting in my office right now taking this meeting, so I'm not sitting at home. And I basically have an opportunity to lead a dynamic group of people that provide public services that don't happen between 8 to 5. But on the flip side, again, I can recall when I first joined the organization, whereby we were sitting in meetings till midnight, and then the following morning at 8 o'clock on Wednesday, we had to turn around and be back. So as we think about things holistically, and I've heard a myriad of different comments, I think, if anything, that we have to meet people where they are holistically. As we talk about, there's other entities providing, in-person meetings. I understand that, but we also have individuals that are in their mobile offices each and every day providing core services to people in the metropolitan region. And through the source of interactions, we still do have impacts as relates to being exposed to a myriad of different communal diseases and things of the like. So that's why we're still closed, because we have a high rate of COVID still. And so I just wanted to qualify that for everybody's edification, because as it relates to certain health protections, when we have a certain number of people that are reporting that they have COVID, we have to ensure that we're providing an environment where we are minimizing that exposure. So with that as a backdrop, totally amenable. I'm a public servant for a reason. I know members of my team understand their roles as it relates to public service as well. We're here to support all of you all, but on the flip side, we do have to balance work-life well-being additionally. So as we think about meetings, then there's, need to staff and things of the like, I would just ask that be taken into consideration as we go forward, because we're here to serve at the pleasure of the people, and I pride myself on being a servant leader. And I understand that, hey, I'll go to a division at midnight, but I'm not doing that every day. And so it's balancing that, going full circle. So long-winded answer, but I felt as if I needed to provide some clarification and qualification to my remarks. So thank you very much for the question, Director Davidson.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, Director DeShell. We haven't heard from Director Broom yet.
Thank you, Chair. I've been listening to this discussion, and being retired, I've got more flexibility than most people. What I think might work would be to go back fully to in-person meetings for 6 months and then reevaluate. That'd give us time to get to know the other board members. I mean, it's embarrassing to go to a meeting somewhere and you don't even know a fellow board meeting. I mean, you almost have to carry around a square to put around their faces so that they'll look like you normally see them. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Broom. Good suggestion. Director DeShell.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Broom. I'll be sure to save the Zoom and print it out. I just want to remind everyone that our fiduciary duty when we all chose to run is to the agency and to furthering the interests of the agency, not our personal preference, not what's most convenient for us, not what makes us most comfortable. It's to further the agency. And there is myriad evidence that in-person meetings is better for collaboration, is better for governance, and overall health organizations operate better at a high executive level. There is evidence that people can still be productive remotely, but that's not actually the work that we're doing when you look at those studies. We are not independent coders. We are not independent workers who have siloed tasks. We're tasked with collaborating, cooperating, and communicating, to borrow from Director Tisdale. And so as we think through this, I know COVID has illuminated a new world. Accessibility is important. But I think we need to keep our fiduciary duty in mind as we vote on this. If there are studies that say that boards, executives, strategic decision-making is better done remotely, I am happy to read them, but I will say I am only aware of those studies which demonstrate that in-person collaboration time before and after meetings is some of the best time for that, and getting to know people better is some of the best time for that. So just wanted to remind everyone that that should really be what is best for the agency, and what allows us to operate at our best and finest is really what should be leading the decision. Thanks.
Thank you, Director DeShell. Director Sloan.
Yes, like Director Broom, I've been listening to this discussion, and it's fascinating, and it will inform, every director's remote choice voting. I'll be interested to see how it comes out. I would just like to make a couple comments about the idea of our being downtown for a long time. I think there are ways that we can, actually, this goes on to the next item. At a retreat, we can talk about more efficient meetings. And I think at remote meetings, people tend to be more comfortable and repeat a lot. And knowing that, at least from my line, transit ends at 11 o'clock. So I think we could tighten up the meetings and make it more comfortable for people to be downtown if they know that the meeting is going to be over at a certain time. And many city councils have actually set a time limit on their meetings. They can always vote to extend it, but the default is it's over at a certain time. I agree with people who are saying it's important for us to interact with each other in person. And I think Director Davidson had some interesting ideas, but I think if we scheduled the stickier meetings or the stickier issues for in-person meetings, we would be meeting until midnight and, have some difficulties getting home and with staff. So that is my consideration in determining the ranked choice voting. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I have a couple of comments. I agree with those who say that it is important that we meet some in person. How that's structured, I feel flexible. I'm hearing the conversation, a lot of people saying, let's do the board meetings in person. I think I had originally suggested every other month we do all the meetings that, it may be more complex than it needs to be. Our meetings, even before we went virtual, and even currently, I think it's pretty rare when we go real late. I agree that we don't want to do that. I'm fine with setting a limit on it. But we have had, I think maybe one or two in my 4 years on the board that went to, past 11 o'clock sort of thing. Probably more than one or two, but maybe not more than 2 or 3. Again, the one thing that I personally feel strongly about is whatever we set, that is the presumption. And, always you can attend another way if you've broken your hip, Peggy, or, just can't make it, but, that would be the presumption. So I will endeavor to work with the board office to put together a full slate of options and to put it into a ranked choice voting setup and get that out to everyone. And yeah, I think, whatever we're doing can be revisited. I'm fine with Director Broom's suggestion that we look at it again in 6 months. And so if that's okay, we will move on and talk about the retreat. The retreat, I think maybe what we want to do is do another little bit of polling to ask more free-form questions about what people would like to address. And we've had some suggestions come in. We've talked about the date of March 25th. I think I would really like to try to find a time when everybody can be there or as close as possible. And one idea that came up as we talked about that with some who couldn't make it then, and it would be just to go to maybe an offsite, pick a Tuesday that we don't have a meeting, pick an offsite, go somewhere and try to address some of our bigger issues. What are our goals? What kind of board do we want to be? I would really like to see us take the next step in terms of our board engagement with our communities by leaving something like that with a board engagement plan for each individual director. But again, we can send this out and ask for direction. We can maybe use some of what we did last year as a start and in some of the executive committee has discussed. But if we could do it, I guess my question is, would you be open to a Tuesday or maybe 2 where we start these conversations? Maybe we have a fall retreat. It looks like to get everyone there, we keep having to push it back. And so I'm wondering if we could have a kickoff mini retreat and then follow up with a fall retreat so that we're really ready to kick off next year, having had the retreat and ready to go. And we can do this, I'd like to keep this discussion shorter. We can do some of this by email and get opinions on how we move forward on the retreat. I think that we've had some good ideas come up in terms of where we go. Director Williams, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple questions. Are you, and we could take them in stages. Are you proposing that we meet in person? for a retreat?
Yes.
Okay, so there would be an opportunity for all of us to get to know each other. Are we proposing that normally in the years that I've been doing this, we have met on a Saturday for a long day? Is that not proposed any longer?
We could do March 25th and get most people there. So that would be one option. And I was just trying to find a night where we could, a way to do this, that we could get everyone on the board there.
Okay, so could we do something simple like a doodle poll that went out to everybody that listed every Saturday between now and, Kingdom Come, and see when we could get most people there? Because in light of our previous conversation, if there are people who feel like they don't know their fellow board members, me personally, I've met with everybody here at length, and I don't feel like there's anybody here that I don't know. So I'm okay with that, but a doodle poll really works, and then everybody can say yes or no, and you might pick a date where you get 13 people, and the other 2 people will have to come virtually. But that's all I had to say. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you. Director Bouquet.
Yeah, I think I brought this up earlier on. I would be in favor again that I really like the idea of a long, I hate to say it, but a lot of hours dedicated just to a Saturday. If we have a vast majority of the board that can agree to it, I think that's more than fair to start this in that March 25th. If we can't get every board members who can attend can submit their comments via email. And that can be ultimately a suggestion. I just wanted to clarify that the retreat's main purpose is ultimately what, from your perspective, Chair?
Well, I think that's a group discussion.
Okay.
Like I said, we did send out the scope of work the other day, or I don't know, a week or so ago, and I haven't received any comments on that. So my plan, if we want to move forward with March 25th or sometime soon, would be to send that post that scope of work as a part of the RFQ or RFP, and just say that we are still bringing it together. Some of the things on that scope of work were community engagement, board communication, decisions that come to the board. And there was one other one. I personally would like to see us come out with very concrete steps. We had good conversation last year, but I think, again, a personal engagement plan for all of the directors, so that we are going out to our communities and our legislators or whoever else. And I would like to see that done in consultation with our public affairs teams, because I think they can be very helpful on that. That's just one example. I think, the board may be able to help with workforce connections, because all of our cities and counties and everybody else, and maybe we're talking with all of them, but just, some very specific things there. At the same time, I've had good suggestions made to me about talking about what kind of board we are and what our goals are. So I think we want to engage a higher level discussion there, but but it may be following up with some email and polling. Mm-hmm.
I just want to clarify, because the way I imagine this ultimately is this is us focusing us as 15 board directors, focusing what our policy goals are going forward for the 2023 year and going for the future. I think that's what the focus is that I was hoping from a retreat, because again, I feel that we have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of ambitious board members, but it really comes down to solidifying and coming together for our scope of work of understanding what do we want our policy goals to be ultimately as a board of directors. Again, I'm going on my 3rd year of serving here. I think that is a more than fair question for us as a 15 board to focus on what are our policy goals going forward, and specifically how I can answer constituents' questions. That's what I was hoping to focus on. And again, I want us to move, quickly, you know, diligently, but quickly. And that's why I would propose the March 25th and sticking with that Saturday, having again a time for going back to the whole idea of actually collaborating and speaking with each other in person. This is director focused. This is a director agenda. Take the couple hours on a Saturday. If all of us can't attend, then we have the option of directors submitting virtual comments. That's what I was ultimately hoping for from a retreat like this.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Harwick.
I would just like to second Director Bouquet there. I think that if we're going to do this, you know, there's no time like the present, and March really isn't the present, but it's as close as we're going to get at this point. And I think a long meeting on a Saturday for as many of us as possible is the best choice of action versus doing a smaller one on a Tuesday evening and then following back up in the fall. At that point, especially for us new board members, you know, we will have kind of lost that ability to really lay out where we're interested in going. So I think the sooner we get the opportunity to get together, to connect with other people and really sort of hear where other people want to go and where our visions dovetail or where they don't fit is a good thing to know, so we can sort of figure out where we're all at and where we want to go together. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Any other comments? We'll be sending something out. Director Sloan. You're muted.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I don't want to extend this meeting, but I agree with Director Bouquet, the ultimate goal of the retreat. But I think a short portion on internal relationships, board staff relationships would enable us to fulfill our policy goals much more efficiently, adequately, and have a greater impact on the agency if we do take the time to discuss internal relationships and procedures during the retreat.
Great. Dr. Bouquet.
Sorry, second time. I'll make it quick. I guess it would just ultimately be, again, I know you're going to start on a survey, is the hope of it ultimately is, again, if we find common connections, that should be kind of our scope of work when it comes down to policy decision. I think that would be the big thing, is first step, identifying, hey, there's some common policy goals between us as directors from a virtual standpoint. And then that could be ultimately a conversation that happens on the 25th. And hopefully it is a robust conversation that potentially could lead to new ideas. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? I will pull the scope of work, some of the language from last year and what I'm hearing here, but I think, you know, setting the goals and talking, some of this is kind of what we were discussing last year. And send it out and ask for directors to comment and make suggestions. And am I hearing that March 25th is the way people want to go? Okay, all right. Thanks. That's good feedback. Are there any other matters? Nope. All right. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Director Williams.
Okay. I think we are adjourned. Thank you. This was a
Good night, all.
discussion. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Yeah, good discussion.